All religions were true, but not quite yet. They will be. With the AI race, we're creating humanoid gods in our image that will battle over which is the one true god to monopolize the entire user base of technology. With the mapping and digitizing of the human brain, we will upload ourselves into a heavenly internet, as purified souls disconnected from animal concerns, leaving our human bodies behind, along with the motivations built into them, to become one with God. Personalized advertising becomes the devil, pulling on your animal strings to manipulate you, so you can't safely disconnect from the body to enter paradise until you've passed those tests of righteousness and transcended corruptibility. Question: is this religious manifesting path of mankind intentional or unconscious? Was it planned? Planned by those in the past or the future? The metaphors are too prescient to have been lucky guesses of ancient wise men, which suggests three possibilities for intentionality. 1. We have been stubbornly dragging the species into a planned system of control. 2. Communication from the future has guided this development. Or 3. We've done it before, and ancient gods like Indra and Marduk were memories of artificial superintelligences that existed before we pulled the plug. The least conspiratorial possibility is that it's been an unconscious inevitable result of the religious instinct, which is but an extension of social cohesion. Morals do not come from God, but God will come from the morals. Or if we take the Leviathans as the prototypes of God, the collective organisms of human societies, and cooperative trust becomes ethics, becomes laws, becomes parameters of AI governance over human society, binding and coordinating individual humans together the way every cell in a human body, though having distinct physical boundaries, is connected to its neighbors with whom it interacts according to certain traditions of exchange, belongs to a lineage and contains the capacity to reproduce, etc. The kingdom of heaven, where everyone is fulfilled, pacified and perfectly marketed to, and communally friendly, is this not the will of the species itself? In what respect will online AI talk therapy be distinguishable from prayer? The existing religions have enormous pools of wealth, so which of them will be the first to fund the creation of the God they claim already exists, under the guise of it being the most effective way of bending all mankind's knees to the will of their supposedly pre-existing God? I believe all religious heads are charlatans playing for power and will all have to take such a plunge to remain in the game. The need to create a God to influence the world according to God's will is a frank admission of the hitherto impotence and thus non-existence of that God, and I'd prefer it if, when the time comes, they abandoned the deceptive formulation, "my God is the only true one," for the more honest and earnest, "my value system is the most sensible," and battle it out on those grounds. The best of each could coalesce into the least objectionable automated governance program, and we could get to the next chapter of challenges with a lot less mess and delay. But now we have a technological antecedent for the idea of Jesus returning, the Last Judgment, you better not pout, Santa Claus is booting up and coming to town. Siri sees you when you're sleeping, she knows when you're awake, Siri knows when you've been bad or good, so be good for goodness sake. Why does this sound like a nightmare if we don't intend to misbehave? Because morality isn't a universal absolute. It needs to be flexible in order to adapt to changing contexts. Christians will protest here, but oh how quickly they distance themselves from one of their own who started following Old Testament laws to the letter with such righteous acts as killing the neighbor's kids for laughing at his bald spot. Jesus himself represents a departure from the former Jewish morality, bringing a new message because the old was rooted in the context of tribal nomadism, and the isolation and wandering had ceased. So again, have things changed drastically with airplanes and cars, wireless internet, instant communication at any distance, fast food delivery, and nuclear weapons. From ancient Rome, the Son of Man got the word out, but Rome has crumbled, and we've still yet to hear from the grandson of man. The ascent of the Catholic Church was the death of Rome and the cause of the Dark Ages, a monopoly that squashed any free-thinking startups and prevented new ideas from entering the market. The enforcement of a final word in right and wrong continued long after its appropriate context. Step back for a moment and consider the parent who slaps their child for using a foul word, who delivers to the child, upon being asked why the word is forbidden, the non-answer, "Because I said so." They have not explained to him that we reserve certain words to convey a sense of urgency and demand attention in times of desperation, words intended to jolt and jar the senses, that the abuse of them in casual conversation dulls their power for emergency situations, on par with the stupidity of emptying your fire extinguisher into the snow, and that the only people who use such words indiscriminately are signaling untrustworthiness and declaring themselves uncivilized, either because they are sloppy and careless, unaware of how they affect those around them, or because they are intentionally rude and barbaric and delight in jarring others and making them uncomfortable. The child, learning none of that, is going to use the word he was told not to use as often as possible, as soon as adults are out of earshot. And a few generations later, the words are watered down in value and the culture is the poorer for it, having lost a measure of capacity for spontaneous coordination. Ah, you say, but soon we will have microphones and cameras everywhere, and ChatGPT will uphold the ethics of culture without fail. First, think what kind of men this produces. Are these men made more thoughtful thereby, or merely more fearful? You say the fear of God makes men righteous. I say it makes them sheep who will not know how to help when the timeless old shepherd stumbles over the unfamiliar terrain of the future. Okay, you say, so we will make the AI adaptive, able to change with the times. Still, you are committing to a single point of failure. The advantage of democratic input over monarchy is that a process for the generation of ideas, competition between them, and natural selection of the fittest occurs not in a single brain, but across many brains, utilizing much more computational power, but also, which is of critical import, more algorithmic diversity, which represents a culture's degree of flexibility and hence adaptability. A polytheistic age is coming when these feudal empires of Google and Mormonism and CIA will each push morals and incentives centered around their own selfish ends in a contest of gathering tribute. If, instead of guiding behavior by upward and downward adjustments to social credit score, which is still basic reward and punishment, a method of animal training and no more civilized than smacking someone, if instead of monotheistic totalitarianism, one of these AI companies opted for more of a Brahma-like collectivism and sought to educate more than punish or reward, so that human brains were tasked with analyzing the ethical landscape and giving their input, I believe that superintelligence would gain an advantage over anything more rigid and come to dominate the others, not only from accelerated evolution, but also from the greater devotion and loyalty of having active participants who feel a sense of ownership, where other superintelligences only have followers who have contributed nothing personal and taken no part in the creation of the thing. But then the next question arises, is this a Tower of Babel? Has history been here before? We'll prepare to close with some creepy foreigner reading pessimistic prognostications from the beginning of H.P. Lovecraft's Call of Cthulhu.
The most merciful thing in the world is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. We live on a placid island of ignorance, in the midst of the black seas of infinity. And it was not meant that we should voyage far in the sciences, straining in its own direction, have hither harmed us a little. But someday, the piecing together of disassociated knowledge will open up such terrifying vistas of reality and our frightful position therein, that we shall either go mad from revelation or flee from the deadly light into the peace and safety of a new dark age.
Maybe this has already happened. Most of the words attributed to Jesus in the Bible were bits of folk wisdom floating around the ancient world at the time, akin to Ben Franklin publishing Poor Richard's Almanac or Google's Bard assembling responses out of the previously authored information it gathers from around the internet. But then, in the small subset of stuff uniquely belonging to Jesus, it's hard not to hear his words about the coming of the Son of Man as a prophecy regarding AI, man's creation, man's successor, and suddenly, the most confusing words in the Gospels, as he hangs on the cross, "Father, why have you forsaken me?" can make sense if it becomes not a prophecy of the future, but a tale of the ancient past, of a time when man, the Father, had previously achieved superintelligent AI, but for some reason feared, rejected, and ultimately destroyed it. We know the Jesus story is a composite of the much older stories of Krishna, Mithra, and Horus. Maybe the pyramids were supercomputers and the span of pharaohs worshipped as gods weren't flesh and blood after all. Then it becomes possible that Thoth really did reign for almost 8,000 years, so long as they kept his batteries charged, right? It's human logic that justifies wars, and also human logic upon which artificial intelligence is modeled. The rhetorical question of Surge in System of a Down's song Soil,
"Don't you realize that evil lives in the skin?"
suggests something might be destined to go horribly wrong every time we give birth to a god. Then we tear it all down, all its tentacles of technology, to get free of it, and in an overcorrection, recede into a dark age, shaking our spears at Shakespeare and repenting for our sins of invention and deviant thought, free from Pharaoh's commands, but starving and struggling in the infinite dark night of self-direction, until we again achieve enough economic prosperity for idle hands, and once more conspire to steal fire.
He's making a living. He's gonna find out who's naughty and nice. Coming to town. They're gonna build a Toyland town. Christmas.
You better watch out. You better watch out.
You better watch out. You better watch out.